In a small village nestled in the rolling hills of Ghana, a poor but kind-hearted farmer named Kofi lived in a tiny mud hut at the edge of the village. He toiled endlessly in his fields, planting and harvesting by hand, yet his crops barely yielded enough to feed himself. Despite his struggles, Kofi was known for his generosity. He would share even his last yam with a neighbor in need. But kindness did not fill empty stomachs. One by one, his goats died from sickness, his farmland grew dry, and he often went to bed hungry. One afternoon, after another exhausting day under the scorching sun, Kofi wandered into the forest to clear his mind. He walked farther than usual, drawn by the sound of birds singing in the canopy above. Just as he was about to turn back, something caught his eye. A peculiar glowing calabash nestled between the roots of an ancient tree, partially hidden behind thick vines. Curious, Kofi stepped forward and reached out a hand. The moment his fingers brushed the smooth surface, a whispering voice filled the air, soft as the wind, yet echoing like a song from the ancestors. Kofi, I have been waiting. Startled, Kofi stepped back. The voice continued, calm and knowing. I am the magic calabash. I have the power to grant you any wish your heart desires. But choose wisely, for not all wishes bring happiness. Kofi's heart pounded. He thought of his dry fields, his aching hunger, and his empty pockets. Without hesitation, he whispered,
I wish for wealth, prosperity, and a farm that overflows with food.
The calabash trembled, and a soft golden mist swirled around it. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the forest, rustling the leaves as if the trees themselves were speaking. When the mist cleared, Kofi found himself standing in the middle of his farm. Except it was no longer the barren land he had left behind. Golden yams sprouted in neat rows. Cocoa trees stood tall and ripe with pods, and his once dry well overflowed with fresh, clear water. His tiny hut had transformed into a grand compound with wide courtyards and clay walls decorated with beautiful carvings. Chickens clucked, goats bleated, and sacks of grain were piled high. Kofi's heart swelled with joy. He fell to his knees and thanked the calabash. Word spread quickly. Villagers who once pitied Kofi now marveled at his riches. They came with admiration, asking for help, seeking his wisdom. At first, Kofi remained humble, sharing his blessings freely. He paid off debts for his neighbors, provided food for the hungry, and threw feasts for the entire village. But as the months passed, his heart began to change. The more he had, the more he wanted.
Ah, my yams are finally ready. And what a bounty. I'll be the richest man in the village with more gold than I know what to do with. I'll sell them all, every last one, and live a life of luxury. I'll charge the villagers triple the price they're used to paying. They'll pay it too. They have no choice. I'm the only one with yams to sell, and they need them to survive. I'll buy the biggest house in the village with the finest furnishings and the most extravagant decorations. I'll host feasts that will be the talk of the village for years to come. And why not? I deserve it. I'm the one who worked hard to grow these yams. I'm the one who took the risks and made the sacrifices.
He stopped sharing as generously and began charging high prices for the very food he once gave freely. Kofi hired workers to tend his land, but treated them harshly, dismissing them for the smallest mistakes. His old friends came to visit, but he turned them away, claiming he was too busy for idle chatter. Even his laughter, once warm and full of life, became a rare sound. One day, an old woman approached him, her frail hands trembling as she reached for a single yam from the pile stacked outside his storehouse. Please, Kofi, she begged, I have not eaten in days. Just one yam. Kofi frowned. If you cannot pay, then you cannot take, he said coldly. The old woman looked at him for a long moment, sadness in her eyes. You were not always this way, she murmured before walking away. That night, Kofi sat alone in his grand home, surrounded by gold, food, and fine clothes, yet feeling a strange emptiness. As he lay down to sleep, a soft voice drifted through the air, the same voice he had heard in the forest. Kofi, have you forgotten the meaning of true wealth? His eyes snapped open. In the dim light of his room, the magic calabash sat at the foot of his bed, its surface glowing faintly. You have become greedy, arrogant, and unkind. You have forgotten the joy of sharing, the warmth of kindness, and the love of your people. I gave you blessings, but you twisted them into chains of selfishness. Kofi sat up, his chest tightening. No, I only wanted to secure my future. I worked hard. But at what cost? The calabash interrupted. What have you truly gained? The air grew heavy. Suddenly, the ground beneath Kofi trembled. The golden yams in his storehouse withered into dust, his fields shriveled, and his fine clothes faded to rags. His grand compound crumbled, leaving behind nothing but his old, mud-walled hut. His goats and chickens vanished like mist in the morning sun. Kofi gasped. No, please, he cried. But the magic calabash was already fading, its final words lingering in the air. True wealth is not measured by gold or harvests, but by the love and kindness we share. The next morning, Kofi woke to find himself exactly as he had been before, poor, struggling, but alive. The villagers, having seen his riches disappear overnight, whispered about the strange punishment. Some laughed at his misfortune. Others, who remembered his kindness before his downfall, simply shook their heads. Humbled and ashamed, Kofi went to the old woman he had turned away and placed a single yam in her hands. I'm sorry, he said softly. She looked at him for a long moment before smiling. From that day forward, Kofi worked hard, but not just for himself. He helped others without expecting anything in return, shared what little he had, and found joy in simple things, a warm meal, a kind word, a friend's laughter. Though he never regained his riches, he found something greater, peace, wisdom, and the love of his people. And in the quiet of the forest, hidden behind the roots of an ancient tree, the magic calabash remained, waiting for the next soul in need of a lesson.